Eberechi Eze smashes Spurs. Liverpool lose once again, and is the relegation battle starting to intensify already? Welcome back to More of a Six. We hope you had a relaxing international break. But the football's back, and so tonight I'm joined by Kyle and Charlie as we look back on another big weekend of Premier League action. Kyle, how are you?
Not too good after last night's result.
What happened? What happened last night?
Oh, mate, we're just a bit washed, to be honest. I'll save it for the main body of the pod, but I'm far from happy. There's too much stuff to talk about.
Oh, bless you. Don't worry. We'll let you have a little rant. Matt, how are you, mate?
Pretty good.
Yeah,
as always, Spurs let us down. Wait, yeah, you won, didn't
It's
you?
always Spurs.
Yeah, you beat
No
Wolves,
perfect weekend.
so
We're
it's
still
always
yet to have
Spurs,
one of
isn't
those.
it?
Char,
Always
how are
Spurs.
you, mate?
Very, very good. Made the travel up to Wolverhampton, 4-hour drive to, and then 4-hour drive from, all in one day. It was heavy, but it was worth it. We got the 3 points. Good day out. Wolverhampton, I think Noni Madueke was absolutely spot on, would be my assessment. Wolverhampton is definitely a shithole. So,
Well, let's get straight into the action. As we did last time before the international break, we're kind of going to go away from doing all the games in chronological order, and instead we're going to look at just the biggest games first. So where better place to start than the North London derby? And it was Arsenal who won again, as Eberechi Eze scored the first hat-trick in this fixture since Alan Sunderland back in 1978. It was a dismal day for Spurs, who set up with a back five but were unable to prevent the inevitable force that is Arsenal. Eze shone with 3 brilliant goals. He also could have had a 4th, while Spurs registered just 3 shots on target, all from outside. 3 shots, all from outside the box, including, of course, Richarlison's 35-yard consolation goal. Oh, where did it all go wrong for Spurs, Kyle?
I think initially, if you just look at the lineup, to be honest, he's went for a back 3, and the wide players being wing backs, and then a double pivot of Bentancur and Palhinha. So first off, there is little to no progression between the two. He's then switched out Spence for Porro, so you also do lose that kind of build up from the back in Porro. It's mainly him and Romero really that offer the kind of progression out from the back. So that's also another player that's down, and like we just couldn't progress the ball. We just couldn't get out of our own half. It was just, we saw it against Chelsea. The players just they just didn't look bothered. Like they just didn't seem to look up for it. They didn't seem to look up for the derby. And it was the same against Chelsea. Like I said, it was just they don't care. And I put a tweet out yesterday saying that a lot of the other top 6 teams, they have a player that has kind of came through the ranks at their club and kind of understand what it is to play for that team. I mean, if you look at Bukayo Saka with Arsenal, he absolutely loves them and he just gets it. The same with, Foden in recent years. There's an argument to say that he has declined quite a fair bit. He has been a bit better this season. But it's like a lot of the teams have a player that has came through the ranks and understands what it is to represent their club. And just at Spurs, since Kane's left and Son now, I know obviously Son didn't come through our ranks, but he was there such a long time. But we just don't really have that with a player now to kind of rub off on the rest of the squad. It boils down to a mentality thing as well. There's just not enough winning mentalities in the squad, to be honest. I think the only one you can really say is Romero, because he's won a fair few trophies with his country. And then again, just other simple things of where, it's the same kind of this. For example, one of our patterns of play would be our wing back knocking a straight pass into Kudus with his back to goal. And it's like he's then getting tripled up on. And that's completely killing our attack. And it's asking so much of Kudus every single time. It's so predictable. Other teams pick up on it so quickly now of where they just part a straight pass to Kudus, just keep tight to him, don't let him turn towards goal, and that's their attack nullified. Credit to Arsenal, they were brilliant. They really turned up, and they've got players that understand the meaning of and the significance of a derby like that. And unfortunately, we don't have that. And I think until some of the younger players are kind of ready to step up, I can't really see us having that kind of that grit, that hunger in them sort of London fixtures.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think you're spot on with everything you've said as well. Also, with Arsenal, I have to give them credit. They were really actually quite enjoyable to watch as well. And for me, that's having Eze at the heart of that attack. I think he's just such a brilliant player. Of course, scored a hat trick, but just some of the stuff he was doing at the end of the game, like the little roulettes and the flicks and the tricks. He's definitely an entertainer. Charlie, do you think that signing could end up being the signing of the summer?
Well, yeah, I think maybe sign of the summer. Great sign, and either way, like I feel like so far it's felt almost as if Eze's been playing with the handbrake on. I saw someone say that. I saw a clip of someone saying that to it, and I just think that's the most accurate way of describing it. Seems like he's almost like hesitant to be the Eze he was for us, as if there's like a pressure of like needing to be like, I don't know, more like capable in possession of maintaining the ball, keeping it ticking, putting up in a more, in like a longer way than maybe Arsenal would, rather than the direct nature that he had at Palace. But I feel like Eze yesterday was the Eze that he is and wants to be, and Eze is best, really. In terms of Spurs, I think Carl kind of hit the nail on the head. I think it boils down to two things. One, I feel like the drastic switch from the Postecoglou style of football last year, I feel like Frank's almost overcompensating from that. This like pragmatic style, it's kind of gone too far. What you said about the two holding midfielders, Bentancur and Palhinha, like the strengths of Palhinha, everybody knows his strengths. So good defensively, incredibly good in the tackle. If he is so good defensively, surely he could do that on his own. It doesn't seem logical to have Bentancur next to him doing the exact same thing. They're stood in the same place, doing the same thing. There's no kind of movement in that midfield. I feel like they set up to try and maybe draw, and you just can't really excuse that going into a North London derby. And what you said about the mentality as well, Carl, is spot on. I feel like, and I don't even necessarily think it's to do with the players and them knowing the identity of the club and what it means. If you look at, Matt will support me in saying this, because I think we've spoke about this before and agreed. Over the last few years, when Palace have played Brighton, it seemed like the Palace players just seemed to want it a bit more. In the games, they seem to like, especially last year at the Amex, I thought was like the biggest example of it. I thought more aggressive, seemed to just want to, seem to know what it meant a bit more. And I feel like that kind of reflects down from the manager. And when you're going into a game like that, similar to what he did the other week against Chelsea, setting up to try and maybe snatch a point, a combined 0.17 XG against Chelsea and at Arsenal for Spurs, it's just not acceptable, really, is it?
No, not at all. And you're completely right. It's just very negative. It didn't feel like at any point Frank wanted to try and go there and win. We have seen, and obviously Arsenal are the best team in the league this season. They're absolutely inevitable. They're very, very good, and they're extremely hard to score against, let alone beat. But in a North London derby, to kind of go away to your rivals, especially when Spurs have been so good away from home this year, and not even set up to try and win, let alone really draw. Like I just don't really understand what the game plan was. As I touched on, in the brief, all three of their shots were from outside the box. They didn't create any chances inside of Arsenal's box, and I feel like that just is a kind of telling sign of not only how well Arsenal defended, but also how much Spurs struggled to break them down. Anyway, we're going to move on now, because obviously Arsenal winning they took advantage of two of their title rivals slipping up big time. And that's if you can even call Liverpool that anymore. I don't think you can. The Slot side have now won just one of their last 7 Premier League games, and their dismal form continued when a rejuvenated Forest side travelled to Anfield. Goals from Gibbs White, Murillo and Savona were enough to see Sean Dyche's side win 3-0, who now look very unlikely to be involved in any form of relegation battle. But after another desperately disappointing result, is the pressure now on Arne Slot? And how bad does it have to get before questions around his future at the club begin to gain momentum? This was a bad loss. One of probably, maybe even the worst loss of the lot when you look at their recent performances. Just really, really poor in every aspect. Forest aren't a great side. Yes, they've got good players. I remember we said when Dyche went in, there's no way they'll get relegated just because of how good their squad is. But Charles, for you, what is it that's going wrong at Liverpool? And also, like I kind of asked, how long does Arne Slot really have, and how many more losses does it take before you're really thinking about sacking him?
Well, it seems ridiculous to say, and I think even if someone had said it to me 2 weeks ago, I would have almost laughed them out of the room. 606 a couple of weeks ago, suggesting that that Slot needed to go at that point. And I feel like what puts the pressure on him is the window, right? last year maybe he could have had excuses if it didn't go well. He's inherited a squad that wasn't his. They didn't make many signings. He made it work and they've won the league. They had a great year. And this year, the fact that he's had this summer where they've spent so much money, brought in all these players that he wanted and that were players that he wanted. Do you know what I mean? Players that he kind of marked down as fitting his identity. The fact it's gone so wrong is just, that almost compiles the pressure, I think. And to be honest, you got to ask questions, but it looks to me like it's not a managerial issue at this point. It might be partially, part of it, but I think they're in a bad rut. Mentality's not there. For like, it's really easy to get stuck in that cycle of just wondering where the next win's going to come from, which sounds ridiculous to say about Liverpool. I think you ask questions, but I think he's allowed himself time purely because of, inheriting that squad last season. But they spent a lot of money in the summer, and suggestions from him that they need to spend more money in January, it's quite bold considering where they're at.
Yeah, for sure. And also the players that they're supposedly looking at in January, Antoine Semenyo, Mark Gay, that would be another, you'd imagine 120, 140 million at least across those two players. Maybe not as much because of course, Mark Gay, but I know there's a £75 million release clause in Antoine Semenyo's Bournemouth contract. I think you're right. I think also, he's got credit in the bank for sure. If he had finished 5th or 6th last season, I don't think people would have really batted an eyelid, as you said, inheriting someone else's squad. But this year's been really poor. And I do think he's maybe going to become a victim of his own success in the sense that he did so well last year. And now it's kind of like, well, there's expectations here. And at a club like Liverpool, you can't be losing 6 out of 7 games in the Premier League. That is just not acceptable. So, Kyle, that kind of begs the question. I don't know if we've lost Matt entirely. He's just disappeared. But so I'll come to you, Kyle. It really begs the question of, at what point, how bad does it have to get until you think Arne Slot could actually be sacked?
I think if they don't start picking up results by maybe Christmas or like end of this year going into January, I think, to be honest, I agree with what you were saying before with how he's kind of, no one would have batted an eyelid if he finished 5th or 6th. It's just kind of the sheer contrast between this season and last season. But like it's been mentioned already, the amount of money that's been spent, and he's making Florian Wirtz, who before this was considered one of the best 10s in the world. He looks dreadful. He looks like he looks like a kid playing in men's football, and I just think that is surely, as a manager, your job is to get the best out of your players. And he's like, for example, Kirkes as well was one of the best fullbacks in the Premier League last season as well. This isn't a player coming from a different league who's like taking a while to adapt, maybe, which is what you could say as a kind of argument with Florian Wirtz. This is a player who's already got Premier League experience in a high pressing side like Bournemouth were last year. You'd expect him to just slot in straight away and be performing. He looks awful. He has been so bad this season. So I think if things don't change from now until the end of New Year, I honestly think questions maybe should be being asked now, purely because of the amount of money he spent. Some managers, like, I couldn't even, oh my God, I think the things I would do to have Thomas Frank be given 500 million to spend in a window, oh my God, I'll never see it. But, managers dream of that amount of money. And as well, it wasn't even like he had to switch his targets to like a second or a third choice target. He got every single target he was after.
Yeah, maybe bar a central defender, but even then, like,
yeah,
I think it's also just
they got Leone, didn't they? They got Leone.
Well, exactly, and he got a really bad injury, so that's unfortunate. But I just think that it's one of those where I think, yes, of course, the horrible thing that happened over the summer has probably had an impact, and I think it'd be a bit naive to kind of suggest that hasn't impacted the players. Obviously, you saw Andy Robertson after he got Scotland through to the World Cup in his interview, and he kind of spoke about how he spoke to Diogo Jota about wanting to go to a World Cup, and how he still thinks about him every day, and it's unsurprising, So it's hard to tell how much of an impact that's had, but I do think that, in terms of a purely footballing aspect, they are doing very, very poorly considering, where they were last year and also where they should be on paper considering how much money they spent. Anyway, we'll move on. We'll get Matt involved now he's back. We're just going to go through a couple of games quickly like we normally do. Some of the games with a bit less to talk about. So just quickly, Burnley 0, Chelsea 2. Chelsea continued to tick over as Pedro Neto and Enzo Fernandez scored to beat Burnley 2-0, sending Maresca's men to second in the table and leaving Burnley languishing in the relegation zone. I'll go through a couple more, and then if anyone wants to kind of jump back and talk about one of these games, feel free. Fulham 1, Sunderland 0, a potential shock of a result as Fulham edged out winners in a close encounter with flying new boys Sunderland. Raul Jimenez scored the winning goal at the Cottage in that one. And then finally, Leeds 1, Aston Villa 2. Leeds looked to disrupt the Aston Villa run, which has seen them win 6 of their last 7 Premier League games. And Lucas Nemecha opened the scoring in the 8th minute for the home side. However, a Morgan Rogers brace was enough to earn Unai Emery's side the 3 points in this one. Has anybody, Matt, maybe we'll go to you. Have you got anything to say about either Chelsea, Sunderland, Leeds, Villa?
First of all, sorry for the disappearance. Well, Leeds, Villa. I was watching a bit of that game yesterday. I thought Villa really struggled on sort of transitions. They in the first half, I thought they were a bit slow to react and just a bit slow, bit tired. Second half, that changed massively. Just Leeds just didn't look up to it and didn't look good enough. Park's got to go. And I saw a video earlier. You look at Lucas Perry's position. It's horrible
for the free kick.
It was
that was awful.
I think.
He was.
Leeds fans are going nuts about it, but
but the keeper's got to do better. Surely,
it's a brilliant free kick. Don't get me wrong.
I think Leeds. I think you're right. I think they're in trouble. I think similarly to Burnley, I think they're going to play kind of well in moments in games, and they're going to look okay. But then actually, when you kind of look into the kind of actual numbers of, for example, Burnley, they're almost bottom in every single important metric that you can imagine in the league. So I think Burnley and Leeds will be well down there. For Fulham, I kind of have them in the bunch with kind of Brentford and Bournemouth for this year, where I just don't think they're going to do anything special, to be honest. I think they'll just finish mid-table. They'll be part of that kind of pack of 6 or 7 teams that don't really impress too much. Anyway, let's move on to.
Can I just quickly ask a question? I've seen a lot of discussion about this over the weekend on social media. Next weekend, Chelsea v Arsenal at Stamford Bridge. How much does the narrative shift if Chelsea beat Arsenal? How much? Because that would make it 3 points gap between Chelsea to Arsenal at the top of the league. Chelsea's fixtures for the rest of December in the Premier League are Leeds, Bournemouth, Everton, Newcastle away, and Villa, and then Bournemouth again. So they've got some winnable games in there. And if they beat Arsenal, it's 3 points. Could they?
Yeah,
that's what I'm going to say. Could they?
I think it's a good question to raise. I think for me, I feel like they just don't have enough in their squad to be. I don't think they're going to be winning all of the kind of games against the likes of Arsenal and City, that kind of thing, which I think is going to be the difference. I think that's why Arsenal will win the league, purely because I think they'll just beat everyone. But I do think, it's definitely worth asking the question, because you're right, they're kind of quietly doing quite well. And like I kind of mentioned very quickly, they're just ticking over. They're just getting the wins that you expect them to get. And then, ultimately, I think that's one we'll just have to wait and see what happens next week. And like you said, if they can pull off a result, then wow, we could actually be looking at maybe a Chelsea-Arsenal title race, which would be lovely. Let's jump on to another part of the kind of top of the table, which gave Arsenal even more of an advantage, and kind of, I'd imagine after watching Liverpool and, of course, Man City lose, would have made Arsenal think, we can really kick on and make some progress here. Of course, Newcastle's league form had appeared to be sidetracked as they put full focus into their Champions League campaign. But when Manchester City came to town, they put in one hell of a battle as they edged out 2-1 winners. Harvey Barnes scored a brace either side of a Ruben Diaz strike for the citizens, as Pep Guardiola's side failed to gain ground on Arsenal at the top of the table. Kyle, do you think this is now Man City out of the title race? It sounds really frugal to kind of say it so flippantly, but it does feel like with each weekend that passes, this may be the one out of all of them that we look back on and think, that's the weekend where Arsenal won the league. What do you think?
Yeah, unfortunately, I just don't think that they're consistent enough. I do believe that when they're playing at their best, City, I think that their ceiling is probably the highest in the league. I think at their best, they are better than Arsenal. However, Arsenal just do consistently put up such a higher level of performance compared to what City do. I think they're quite hit or miss this season. Like, for example, if you compare Saturday's result, against Newcastle, and then compare that to their derby win against Manchester United, where they absolutely demolished them, it's night and day between the two performances. And I just think that's really City's issue they might be the better team on their day, but it just doesn't come about too often. And it really pains me to say it, because I couldn't think of anything worse than seeing Arsenal win the league, but it might actually be something that we have to kind of brace ourselves for, because they do just look like, for when we played them, I was just never confident of us scoring. I know obviously Richarlison scored that freak goal, but I mean, for the rest, we just did not look like scoring. And I think that's the same for pretty much every side that comes to play them. They just don't look like they're going to concede, Arsenal, unfortunately.
Yeah, I completely agree. And also, we'll go to you, Matt, because I do think that it's a good win for Newcastle in terms of the league table, because where it was extremely tight kind of before the international break, it is starting to spread out just a tad. Of course, now the gap between the top 5 and kind of mid-table, 13th, 14th, is stretched now to 5 points, between 5, 6, 7-ish points. You know, that's now starting to kind of make it a bit more of a job to kind of climb that league table. Of course, both of our sides we'll touch on in a bit, but we're both in a good position. But for Newcastle especially, 2 wins in their last 5 now, not doing incredibly in the league. Do you think the win came at a good time, and do you think it kind of shows again how good their character is?
Yeah, they needed that boost, and it's quite obvious, to be honest, that Newcastle were going to get a result. St James's Park, under the lights, City, and for a minute one, they had the chances, and you could sense it was going to be a pretty end-to-end game. I was just listening to it on the radio, saw the highlights, and you never really got the feeling listening to it that Newcastle weren't going to get a result. It's just Newcastle in that kind of game just sort of have that inevitability, that grit that a side like City just don't really have. I think when it comes to mentality and mental strength as a team, Newcastle were up there with the strongest, and that's something that's fundamental in football.
Let's jump over then
to
to Bournemouth 2, West Ham 2, where Bournemouth fought back after going 2-0 down to 2 excellent Callum Wilson strikes, especially the second one was a really, really nice finish. Some poor goalkeeping from Petrovic for the first, but West Ham ultimately failed to hold on to that lead. And absolutely, did you see Marcus Tavernier's penalty? I've never seen a penalty hit that hard. Absolutely ripped it into the net before Inez Unal equalised in the 81st minute. So for West Ham, tough one to take. Obviously, really could have done with that 3 points, but ultimately Bournemouth managed to fight back. The point does, however, lift West Ham above the relegation zone. So Charlie, what do you make of that? Obviously, do you think there's issues around it in terms of them not being able to kind of see out a result? But also, are you thinking now, looking at the bottom 3 that of Leeds, Burnley, Wolves, do you think that's maybe what it could end up being at the end of the season?
I don't think West Ham will go down. I just don't. Nuno's just too good of a manager. I'm saying that, however, yes, I feel like on Saturday, I feel like the draw in the end was kind of his own doing. They're 2-0 up. And he brings off, I think it was 55 minutes in, he takes off Callum Wilson for Souček and puts Souček up front. And he made another sub, which was just slightly confused, put on Kyle Walker-Peters at right wing or left wing. And I just feel like that's maybe what turned that game around, is that kind of negativity. And I know he's a pragmatic manager and they want to see out games, but I feel like that was a strange decision to take off your striker for a defensive midfielder 10 minutes into the second half. As a Bournemouth, really nice goal. That Unal goal, by the way, you mentioned the Wilson one, but that turn was gorgeous.
Lovely first touch.
A good finish too.
Lovely first touch.
West Ham won't go down. In terms of the bottom 3, I feel like the only team that I would have said 2 weeks ago, maybe Burnley. They've shown some glimpses of, but I just don't think that they're going to score enough goals. And the pragmatic thing, it's worked here and there, but again, they just concede too many. And it's silly goals as well. I don't know if anyone saw the second goal for Chelsea. I was in the concourse before the game at Molineux, and it just it's so easily beat. Was it Twanzebe, Mark Gui? Just so easy. It should never be that easy for a defence to be beat in the Premier League. And yeah, I just feel like they're kind of shooting themselves in their own foot. To be honest, I think it would be those 3. Wolves are definitely going, by the way. We'll get on to that. But
we will. They are shocking. Anyway, we're going to let Matt have the floor for a little bit because, of course, Brighton have tended to struggle against the lesser opponents in the Premier League this season. But to be honest, it's quite hard to determine whether or not Brentford fall into that category or not. The Bees have played well this season and they took a 1-0 lead into the break after Igor Thiago scored his 400th penalty of the season. But a superb Danny Welbeck finish. Honestly, absolutely unbelievable goal that, if you've not seen it. As well as a Jack Hinchelwood strike was enough to win the game for Fabian Hertzler's side, as Bart Verbruggen saved the 94th minute penalty to deny, of course, Thiago penalties, a brace, and of course Brentford a point. So Matt, 3 points for Brighton. A penalty save for Verbruggen, which, as I understand, is maybe the most shocking part of that entire result. What did you make? What did you make of the win? And yeah, talk to us.
Non-existent. Buzzing. That was probably one of my favourite wins in the last few years, to be honest, as a sort of fan, because we were awful. We really weren't very good. Brentford are just a very solid side that do the basics right. I've said plenty on that, and I always thought that their set piece. I mean, to be fair, their set pieces, we defended them really well. Their long throw, the corners, whatever. But it's just stupid tackle from Bella, but really stupid. He was shocking, and he needs a couple games off to get his head right, because he's not good enough at the moment. He really isn't. He's been really, really bad. Just grinding results out like that just feel just really, really good, and over the moon. Just about 3 points. Just buzzing. These games are the games you have to win, because it's gone from no Europe all of a sudden to 6th place.
Well, 100%. And it's kind of what I was touching on. The league, it's kind of got to a point now where it's stretching out a little bit. And I think Palace and Brighton have done quite well to kind of stay above the kind of rest in that sense, 5th and 6th now. So yeah, we'll jump quite nicely there. Thank you very much. Over to Wolves versus Palace. With Rob Edwards in for his first game, many expected a new-look Wolves side, but ultimately a professional Palace performance meant that it was Glasner's side who won the game. A well-taken Munoz goal was shortly followed by a Jeremy Pino screamer as Palace went 5th in the league table. With games against United, Burnley and Fulham to come, are Palace able to really break into that top 4? Char, you were at Molineux. Talk to me about Wolves. Do you think they have any chance of surviving? But also talk to me about how good Palace were.
To answer the original question, no, we won't be able to break into the top 4. The fixtures will catch up with us. I hate to be a pessimist, but it's just bound to happen. Wolves, it was an interesting game in all fairness. I think if I was Rob Edwards, I would be extremely frustrated. It became apparent that they are incompetent player by player. Watching that game for 90 minutes and seeing it in person, some of the just basics and fundamentals, genuinely, and I'm sure all of the Wolves fans listening would agree with me. Some of the just basic things that you expect from footballers, not even in the Premier League, but just in general, it was just passes 5 yards behind players. They're on the counter attack and they turned around and passed it back, and it's just they had periods which was always going to happen. New manager, crowd a bit up for it. The first 15 minutes, they had a bit going on, maybe a couple half chances. First 10 minutes of the second half, I said at half time to the boys, it was always going to happen. They were going to come out. He would have fired them up a bit. We had to ride that storm out, and we did. There was never really a doubt in my mind that we weren't going to win. Even if they went ahead, it just we had so much more quality. It became very apparent. Adam Wharton was an absolute joke yesterday. I feel like we say this every week, and I also feel like the fact that we're playing against Wolves, that kind of doesn't feel as significant to say, but he is just, honestly, I can't even put it into words. It's same to other fan bases how good he is. It will just never have its effect until he moves to another club and has success there. But yeah, I was really happy with Pino as well. I thought first half, I didn't think he had a great first half. But second half, I think he was really, really good, very good creatively, scored a great goal. Munoz always sharp. I was really happy with that. Proper performance away from home. It's a potential banana skin, isn't it? Away from home against a team with a new manager, crowd are going to be up for it. They've been dire all season, so this new manager maybe lift the crowd a bit. But I think very professional performance, I'd say. And I don't think top 4, but I said at the start of the season, win the Conference League, but qualify for Europa League anyway through the league. That was my prediction. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, there you go. And then we'd be nice and generous and hand down an extra Europa League place for someone else in the Premier League, wouldn't we, by doing that? We couldn't agree more. I thought that we, just very professional, got the job done. I thought we were going to rue-miss chances again when Mateta missed that one-on-one. Luckily, we didn't. Kyle, I'm going to give you a tricky task. I want you to try and shine some positivity on Wolves and tell me any possible way that they might be able to escape this relegation zone. And you can't say Rob Edwards orders assassins to go and shoot up the training centres at Burnley and Leeds and everywhere else. So that's not an option, okay?
A positive. If they go down, they have some resale value. I don't know. Like that's probably one of the only things I can think of really. I think Andre is probably good enough to stay in the Premier League. I'm trying to think of who else to be.
Yeah, but even then,
obviously
there's not
Larson
many.
up front. I think Larson they could fetch a good
awful, by
fee
the way.
for.
Andre
Yeah,
was
he probably
probably
wasn't
like
great
I'd say
that game, but
stand out the worst player on that side. It felt like
Who's their striker?
all he could
Who's
do
their
is tackle.
striker?
He
Is
can't progressible.
Who's their striker?
Arakadara and
Alakadare.
Strand Larson.
Yeah,
Arakadara.
I think
Glasner
Glasner might be
likes
a
him
fan of
apparently.
him.
Did
He
you
was
see
having
that?
a chat with him
He had
after
a
the
big
game,
chat with
wasn't
him.
he? So maybe he'll be coming Palace. Wouldn't mind
Strand
that.
Larson,
I like
by the
his
way.
profile.
Strand Larson, by the way, I've always vouched for Strand Larson. I've said I think he's a great goal scorer, proper poacher, finisher. I was watching him warm up as well. Genuinely didn't put a ball in the net in the entire finishing warm up. And then he went. I just thought he was awful. He was so bad on the ball. His first touch was so poor. He just didn't seem to be wanting to get into the positions. I think he's a player he knows he'll get a move if they go down.
he's checked out.
His head's clocked out.
He's checked out already.
Completely
It just looked like the atmosphere in the stadium. They're booing. We said, Arias missed that one on that tap in. We're all singing "fucking useless." The entire stadium joins in. It's just not a good vibe there, really. And I don't know if we can come back from that.
No, definitely not. I couldn't agree more. Right, that's almost it for this episode. But of course, as we're recording in about an hour and a half time, Everton travel to Old Trafford to face Man United. So we'll quickly grab a little score prediction, from each of you. So Charlie, score prediction for this one?
Can I give you 3 things that will definitely happen instead? Illiman and Jai skill comp on Twitter. United fans decided they win him in January. Brian and Buemo goal. United win. There you go.
Okay. Kyle, what you got?
I'm going to go 2-1 to United. They've looked good recently, have United. It seems like things are kind of starting to click a little bit for them. So I think, 2-1.
Okay, I'm going to go 4-1 United. I think it's going to be a bit of a shock. I think Buemo
4-1.
Yeah, I for some reason, there's just something about the fixture that's just making me think that United are going to batter them. I'm not sure why. I could be completely
Thoughts
wrong.
on the Illiman and Jai skill comp?
Oh, it's happening.
I think that's mandatory.
It's got to be done. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. Please remember, of course, to like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and leave a 5-star rating on Spotify. Let us know what you thought in the comments. What did you make of the weekend? Do you think it's Arsenal's league to lose? We all do. I think that's fair enough to say. But until next weekend, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you very soon.